Let's do this. Hello. Welcome to another episode of Fearox Frank Review. Hold on. That's where I put the fucking jersey. I'm as blind as a freaking bat, even with my goddamn glasses on. I'm an idiot. Plain and simple. And yeah, I'm also a Falcons fan. Not just a Giants fan, I'm also a Falcons fan. I also have other teams I root for too, so... Yep. Anyway, welcome to the Fearox Frank Reviews. Today we're going to be looking at a martial arts movie, in a sense. A B-movie martial arts movie produced by Roger Corman, in a sense. So, for those of you who don't know who Roger Corman is, he is the B-movie king. He makes at least he makes at least over a dozen films a year, and he still gets a good amount of money on such low budgets. Anyway, today's film is actually the first collaboration of many, many movies with Roger Corman and the greatest kickboxer of all time, at least from the 80s and 90s perspectives, thanks to Black Belt magazine, Don the Dragon Wilson. So for those of you who are into kickboxing, especially some of the original kickboxing days from the 70s all the way through the 90s in a sense, kickboxing rules were very different back then. Back then, they were more heavily set based on karate set rules in a sense, which meant punch, which meant punching and kicking in a sense. Closed fist gloves, and feet with a padded sole on it. And so sometimes with a shoe, give or take. And all the pants they had were all karate-based pants, exactly, that were heavily modified. When it originally was started, it was called karate, but a lot of people started using other moves in a sense that were not karate-based, like taekwondo stuff, boxing maneuvers, stuff from Muay Thai, Savate. So they just wound up calling it kickboxing eventually. Yep. And Don Wilson was one of the best fighters that ever lived at that time. And to be fair, one, the guy's still around. He makes martial art movies to this very day, and he looks pretty good for his age too. He's going into the 60s, and he still looks good. Actually, I think he's 60 right now. So, But this is Bloodfist. This was the first of many films that Roger Corman and Don Wilson did together. Exactly. Bloodfist is a series of movies that star Don Wilson and were produced by Roger Corman. What can I say about Bloodfist? Well, it's a knockoff. Alright, if you haven't noticed, most of Roger Corman's films, especially whether they're huge hits, originals, or just straight and blatant copies of real big budget hits. In Bloodfist's case, it was actually a combination of two Van Damme movies, one of which I already did, by the way, which was my first film review. The films that this movie was basically copying off of was Bloodsport, which is one of my favorite martial art movies of all time, starring Van Damme, and the other one was Kickboxer. So put two of them together, what do you got? Bloodfist. The other difference is there are differences. One of them is which they actually used karate fighters and real kickboxers. And, yeah. Guess who's on the cover with Don Wilson here? Don't know who that is? It's Billy Tybo Banks. Yeah, the guy who makes all those Tybo videos, the kickboxing workout aerobics videos. Yeah, he's one of the opponents that Don Wilson fights in this movie. The storyline is sort of a combination between Bloodsport and Kickboxer in a sense. The only difference is that the brother actually gets killed in the beginning of the movie, and Don Wilson has to go in and find out who killed his brother in a sense. It's convoluted. The storyline's a little convoluted, and it's a little mixed up from time to time in a sense. Now, I will say the one thing I really like the most in this is probably all the fight scenes, because they used actual fighters in this movie. And the locations are all good too, because I think this is one of those knockoff films that actually had a pretty decent budget, because they did most of the filming in Manila, because the movie takes place in Manila, which is in the Philippines. And they have this tournament called the Bloodfist Tournament, and they actually go in, they dress up as karate fighters, and they fight each other, and no matter what your fighting style is, you can participate. well, since Don Wilson's brother actually died halfway through the tournament, in a sense, and he was killed outside the ring, Don Wilson takes his place. And, yeah, the training's a little hazy here, too. It's kind of stupid, which is like, Don Wilson was a boxer, and this guy trains him as a kickboxer within just a week. It's like, yeah, unless you're in Human Weapon or Fight Quest, I don't think that's going to work out so well. Yeah, seriously. So, the one thing I find that's really kind of annoying in this movie is probably the editing. In a sense, the editing is all over the goddamn place. Like, they mix scenes here and there. In a sense, the editing is really bad timing in a sense, though. The fight scenes are somewhat good in a sense, but I think the editing was kind of like a rush job, because at least they took their time with making the movie, but the editing skill must have been a huge rush job, because they really chopped up the editing there. Good lord. But in the end, Don Wilson finds out who actually defeats the greatest fighter that the Bloodfist tournament has. And the guy who trained him is actually the guy who killed his brother, because supposedly his brother killed the trainer's brother, because his brother was actually in the tournament too. Yeah. So Don Wilson's killed the brother of the trainer, and the trainer trains Don Wilson, only to have Don Wilson kill him. In fact, the last line that's in the movie is probably the guy who trained Don Wilson. He says, when he's dying, he's like, "I trained you well." Yeah, considering you have some spikes going through your lungs, it's amazing you're even talking at all, so, okay. The soundtrack is pretty decent, too. It's like, it's 80s rock, it's basically 80s rock music just slapped in there, but, yeah. So, like I said, this movie is a collaboration of Bloodsport and Kickboxer, just with actual fighters in it, though. So, it's an okay watch, in a sense, but a lot of people say they didn't really like it because they knew it was a cash grab, in a sense, and as time goes on, to be fair, it still feels like a cash grab if you knew when this film came out. In the long run, would I recommend my friends watch this movie? Yeah, I would. If they're martial art film fans, give this movie a watch. But, like I said, this was the first of many movies that Don Wilson and Roger Corman did. Does that mean there were sequels to this movie? Yes. There were at least 8 sequels to this film. Or 9, I'm not really too sure. So far, there's 8 confirmed in a sense, and there's another one, but I don't think it's related. So, Don Wilson's character is called Jake Ray in this movie. So, do all the films follow Jake Ray? Yes, they all follow Jake Ray. Each time the story gets even more intensive. It gets even more batshit crazy, in a sense. Jake Ray has to defend his martial arts title against many, many opponents. And can he continue doing this? Okay, I'm just fucking kidding, in a sense. The only movie that's a direct sequel to this is actually the second film. It says with the Jake Ray character. Every other movie after that, they all star Don Wilson, but they're all completely different movies. They're all self-contained films. It's like taking it's like, you know how the Halloween film series kind of changed it up a little bit when the third film came out? We had Halloween 2, and Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. The first 2 films had Michael Myers in it. The third film was a completely different movie that was more or less a film that wanted to do a whole sub-series of movies, but make them all contained in their own film universes, in a sense. That failed, but for some reason it worked with Bloodfist. Yep, the third movie, basically, he's a convict. The fourth movie, he's a father trying to get his daughter away from terrorists. Oh boy, something's telling me I'm going to be doing a lot more Bloodfist films as my show goes on, because the stories are just freaking ridiculous, though very entertaining. So expect to see Don Wilson movies. So expect to see Don Wilson more in my show. So, what's the next film I'm going to review? Fuck it. I'll do a coin toss then. So until then, take care. So I won't lose it again.